Divine advisors. The role of spiritual leaders in shaping Trump's religious messaging. Religion has always played a powerful role in American politics, but no president has used it quite like Donald Trump. How did a man with a controversial past and a largely secular lifestyle win over such a large portion of the evangelical Christian community? In this video, we're going behind the scenes to uncover the secret weapon of Trump's success, his spiritual advisors. Figures like Paula White, Franklin Graham, and Jerry Falwell Jr. didn't just support Trump, they shaped his entire religious narrative, casting him as a leader chosen by God to defend Christian values. From policy decisions to culture wars, these religious figures helped build a powerful, faith-based movement around Trump that reshaped American politics forever. If you want to understand the true impact of Trump's religious strategy and how it continues to influence politics today, this is a video you don't want to miss. From the 2016 campaign trail to his time in the White House, figures like Paula White, Franklin Graham, and Jerry Falwell Jr. helped Trump secure the unwavering support of Christian voters. These spiritual leaders framed his presidency as a divine mission, aligning their religious teachings with Trump's political objectives. In many cases, they defended his actions and character, drawing parallels between Trump and biblical figures chosen by God despite their flaws. This article explores how Trump's spiritual advisors influenced his religious rhetoric, from the campaign trail to policy decisions, and examines the broader implications of their role in blending religion and politics. How did they justify Trump's place as a defender of Christian values, and what long-term impact did they leave on the American political and religious landscape? The intersection of religion and American politics is not a new phenomenon. For centuries, faith has been wielded as a tool to rally voters, inspire political movements, and shape public policy. From the religious undertones of the Founding Fathers' debates to the Christian underpinnings of the abolitionist movement, faith has always held a special place in the American political landscape. However, the more formal fusion of religion and Republican politics emerged in the 20th century with the rise of the Christian right. Figures like Jerry Falwell Sr. and his moral majority movement in the 1980s capitalized on the growing political power of evangelical Christians. The Christian right focused on social issues such as abortion, school prayer, and traditional family values, aligning themselves with conservative politics. By the time Ronald Reagan was elected in 1980, the Christian right had solidified its position as a key voting bloc within the Republican Party. Reagan's use of religious rhetoric helped shape the modern Republican strategy of appealing to Christian voters. His famous invocation of America as a shining city on a hill referenced a biblical image, signaling a moral and religious authority in his leadership. Similarly, George W. Bush, an openly evangelical Christian, aligned himself with religious conservatives, framing his policy decisions through the lens of faith and morality. Donald Trump's success in securing the evangelical vote cannot be separated from the role of his spiritual advisors. These religious leaders not only endorsed Trump, but actively shaped the way he spoke about faith, framed his policies, and connected with Christian voters. At the center of Trump's religious messaging was Paula White, a televangelist and proponent of the prosperity gospel. White's relationship with Trump dates back to the early 2000s when she began offering spiritual guidance to the businessman. Over time, White became one of Trump's closest spiritual confidants and his official spiritual advisor during his presidency. White's theology, centered around the prosperity gospel, aligned well with Trump's image as a successful, wealthy businessman. The prosperity gospel teaches that material wealth and success are signs of God's favor, a message that resonated with Trump's personal brand. White frequently framed Trump's success as a businessman and politician as evidence of God's divine plan. At key moments during Trump's campaigns and presidency, White took to the pulpit to defend his leadership. For example, during the 2016 campaign, White declared that Trump was anointed by God to lead the nation, drawing comparisons to biblical figures like King David, who was chosen by God despite his imperfections. White's public prayers often invoked themes of spiritual warfare, casting Trump as a defender of Christian values against the forces of evil. One of the most notable moments of White's influence came in the days leading up to the 2020 election. In a widely shared prayer broadcast, White called on angelic reinforcements from Africa and South America to ensure Trump's victory. The prayer, which drew both criticism and support, was a vivid example of how White infused her prosperity gospel teachings into her public support for Trump. It reflected the broader narrative among Trump's spiritual advisors, that his presidency was not just a political mission, but a divine one. Another key figure in Trump's religious circle was Jerry Falwell Jr., the president of Liberty University and son of Moral Majority founder Jerry Falwell Sr. Falwell Jr.'s early endorsement of Trump in 2016 shocked many within the evangelical community, as Trump's personal history seemed to conflict with traditional evangelical values. Falwell Jr., however, argued that Trump was the right leader for the country, emphasizing his policies over his personal conduct. Falwell's endorsement carried significant weight within the evangelical community, particularly among students and alumni of Liberty University, one of the largest Christian universities in the world. Falwell Jr.'s support for Trump was rooted in the belief that Trump would protect religious freedoms and appoint conservative judges who would uphold pro-life policies. Throughout the campaign, Falwell frequently compared Trump to biblical figures who were chosen by God despite their flaws. This messaging helped justify Trump's leadership to evangelicals who might have otherwise been skeptical of his personal character. Falwell's influence was on full display when Trump delivered a commencement speech at Liberty University in 2017. Standing before thousands of students, Trump invoked religious language and called on graduates to be warriors for Christ in a world hostile to Christian values. The event solidified Trump's connection to the evangelical community and underscored the role of figures like Falwell in shaping his religious messaging. Franklin Graham, the son of renowned evangelist Billy Graham, played a crucial role in Trump's rise to power by rallying evangelical support. Initially hesitant to endorse any candidate during the 2016 primaries, Graham became one of Trump's most vocal supporters once Trump secured the Republican nomination. Throughout Trump's presidency, Graham defended him on numerous occasions, particularly on issues related to religious freedom and conservative values. Graham's alignment with Trump was often framed in terms of a culture war, with Graham portraying Trump as a defender of Christian America against secular forces. Graham frequently praised Trump's stance on issues like abortion and religious liberty, and he invoked his father's legacy to lend credibility to his support. One of the most striking moments of Graham's support came in the aftermath of the 2020 election, when he publicly declared that Trump had done more for Christianity in America than any other modern president. Graham's unwavering support, even in the face of controversy, highlighted the deep connection between Trump and the evangelical community, largely fostered by spiritual leaders like Graham. These spiritual advisors not only helped Trump craft his religious messaging, but also played a key role in securing the evangelical vote, a critical component of his electoral success. A significant aspect of Trump's religious messaging was influenced by Paula White's theology, particularly her belief in the prosperity gospel. The prosperity gospel teaches that material success and wealth are signs of God's favor, a message that aligned perfectly with Trump's image as a successful businessman and outsider candidate who promised to restore America's greatness. The prosperity gospel emphasizes faith, financial success, and personal empowerment, often suggesting that individuals who follow God's teachings will be rewarded with health, wealth, and success. For many Americans, particularly in the evangelical community, this message resonated with Trump's personal story of success and his promises to bring economic prosperity back to the country. White's influence was evident in Trump's speeches, where he often framed America's potential for greatness in terms of divine favor. He spoke about his plans to restore American power, wealth, and influence as part of a broader spiritual mission. This narrative played into the idea that Trump's presidency was not just a political victory, but part of a divine plan to make America great again. Critics of the prosperity gospel have argued that it distorts traditional Christian teachings, focusing too much on material wealth and success rather than on spiritual growth or moral behavior. Nevertheless, the message found a receptive audience among Trump's supporters, who saw their own hopes for economic recovery reflected in Trump's promises. One notable example of Trump embracing prosperity gospel themes occurred during a rally in 2016 when he told the crowd, "I'm rich, I'm very rich, but you can be rich too. America can be rich again." This rhetoric, while secular on the surface, carried echoes of the prosperity gospel's message that wealth and success are attainable for those who follow the right path. While the prosperity gospel played a significant role in shaping Trump's religious messaging, his broader appeal to evangelical voters went beyond promises of material success. It also tapped into deeper cultural and political concerns within the evangelical community. Most surprising aspects of Donald Trump's political rise was his ability to secure the overwhelming support of white evangelical voters. Despite his lack of personal religiosity and controversial past, Trump won 81% of the white evangelical vote in 2016 and maintained strong support from this group in 2020. This success was largely due to the work of his spiritual advisors, who framed Trump as a defender of Christian values and religious freedom. Trump's appeal to evangelicals was multifaceted. First and foremost, his promises to appoint conservative judges, particularly to the Supreme Court, resonated deeply with religious voters who prioritized issues like abortion and religious liberty. Trump's release of a list of potential Supreme Court nominees during the 2016 campaign, many of whom were staunchly pro-life, was a turning point in securing the evangelical vote. Additionally, Trump's rhetoric about restoring Christian America and protecting religious freedoms appealed to evangelicals who felt that their values were under threat from an increasingly secular society. His spiritual advisors, particularly Franklin Graham and Jerry Falwell Jr., played a critical role in legitimizing Trump's candidacy within the evangelical community. By invoking biblical narratives and framing Trump as a flawed but chosen leader, they helped evangelicals justify their support for a candidate who did not fit the traditional mold of a Christian leader. A key moment in Trump's outreach to evangelicals came during the 2016 campaign when he spoke at the annual Values Voter Summit, a gathering of Christian conservatives. Trump promised to defend religious liberty, restore Christian values in public life, and appoint conservative judges. The audience's enthusiastic response signaled that Trump had successfully tapped into the concerns of evangelical voters, many of whom had felt marginalized by previous administrations. Trump's ability to secure the evangelical vote was one of the most significant factors in his electoral success, but it was not without controversy. While many evangelicals embraced Trump as a defender of their values, others were more critical, raising questions about the morality of aligning with such a polarizing figure. Throughout his presidency, Donald Trump frequently invoked religious language in the context of the broader culture war that defined much of his political rhetoric. With the help of his spiritual advisors, Trump positioned himself as the defender of Christian values in a society increasingly divided along cultural and moral lines. Key policy areas where this religious rhetoric was most evident included abortion, religious liberty, LGBTQ+ rights, and immigration. On abortion, Trump's appointment of conservative judges and his administration's support for pro-life policies endeared him to religious voters, who saw these actions as essential to protecting the sanctity of life. Religious freedom was another key issue, with Trump frequently framing his policies as a defense of Christian institutions against government overreach. Trump's spiritual advisors often portrayed these policy battles as part of a larger spiritual conflict between good and evil. Franklin Graham, for example, frequently invoked themes of spiritual warfare, suggesting that Trump was chosen by God to lead the fight against secularism, liberalism, and what they saw as the moral decay of American society. One of the most visible instances of Trump using religious rhetoric in the context of the culture war came during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. After protesters were cleared from Lafayette Square, Trump walked to St. John's Episcopal Church and held up a Bible for a photo op. The image was immediately polarizing. While critics saw it as a cynical political stunt, many of Trump's supporters interpreted it as a powerful symbol of his commitment to defending Christianity in a time of crisis. The use of religious rhetoric in these culture war battles helped Trump solidify his base, but it also deepened divisions within the religious community and American society at large. While Trump enjoyed strong support from many evangelical leaders, his use of religious rhetoric was not universally embraced within the Christian community. Prominent Christian leaders and organizations, particularly within mainline Protestant and Catholic traditions, criticized Trump for what they saw as the manipulation of faith for political gain. One of the most vocal critics was the editorial board of Christianity Today, a leading evangelical magazine founded by Billy Graham. In December 2019, Christianity Today published an editorial calling for Trump's removal from office, arguing that his actions were inconsistent with Christian values. The editorial sparked a national conversation about the role of faith in politics and highlighted the growing rift within the evangelical community over Trump's leadership. Russell Moore, head of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, was another prominent evangelical critic of Trump. Moore frequently spoke out against Trump's rhetoric and policies, particularly on issues like immigration and racial justice, which he argued were at odds with the teachings of Jesus. In the aftermath of Christianity Today's editorial, Trump lashed out on Twitter, calling the magazine far left and dismissing its criticisms as politically motivated. However, the editorial struck a chord with many evangelicals who had been quietly questioning their support for Trump, leading to increased public debate within religious circles about the morality of aligning with his administration. Despite these criticisms, Trump's core base of evangelical supporters remained largely loyal, viewing his policies as outweighing any concerns about his personal conduct or the sincerity of his religious beliefs. Trump's spiritual advisors not only shaped his religious messaging, but also had a direct impact on policy decisions throughout his presidency. The most significant area where their influence was felt was in judicial appointments, particularly to the Supreme Court. Trump's pledge to appoint conservative judges who would uphold religious liberty and pro-life values was a central promise to his evangelical supporters, and his administration delivered on that promise. By the end of his presidency, Trump had appointed more than 200 federal judges, including 3 Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. These appointments were celebrated by religious conservatives who saw them as a safeguard against liberal policies on abortion, LGBTQ+ rights, and religious freedom. In addition to judicial appointments, Trump's administration enacted several executive orders aimed at protecting religious liberty. One such order allowed religious organizations to receive federal funding without being required to adhere to anti-discrimination laws that conflicted with their beliefs. This policy was hailed by religious conservatives as a victory for religious freedom, but it was criticized by civil rights groups for potentially allowing discrimination against LGBTQ+ individuals. Trump's spiritual advisors also played a role in shaping his foreign policy, particularly his strong support for Israel. Many evangelical Christians believe in a theological interpretation that views the establishment of the State of Israel as part of biblical prophecy. Trump's decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem was seen by many evangelicals as a fulfillment of that prophecy, and his spiritual advisors praised the decision as a demonstration of his commitment to biblical principles. One of the most significant moments in Trump's relationship with evangelical leaders came during the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court in 2020. Barrett, a devout Catholic, was hailed by religious conservatives as the ideal candidate to uphold pro-life values. Trump's decision to nominate Barrett just weeks before the 2020 election was seen as a final gesture of loyalty to his evangelical supporters, solidifying their support even as the election approached. While Trump's policies on religious liberty and judicial appointments were celebrated by his supporters, they also sparked significant controversy and legal challenges, particularly from civil rights groups and religious minorities. As Donald Trump's presidency came to an end in January 2021, the legacy of his religious advisors continued to shape the political and religious landscape in America. The deep bond between the Republican Party and evangelical Christians, which had been strengthened under Trump's leadership, remained intact, with many religious leaders continuing to support Trump's influence in politics even after he left office. Figures like Paula White and Franklin Graham remained active in political circles, often invoking the same religious themes that had defined Trump's presidency. White, for example, continued to lead prayer services and public events in support of Trump, while Graham remained an outspoken critic of the Biden administration, framing his opposition in terms of a battle for Christian values. However, Trump's presidency also left a lasting impact on the evangelical community, with growing divisions between those who supported Trump's religious messaging and those who saw it as a distortion of Christian values. Some evangelicals began to question the political alliances that had defined their community for decades, leading to renewed debates about the role of faith in politics. In the aftermath of the 2020 election, Franklin Graham posted on social media that Trump had been betrayed by his political allies, but that God's will would ultimately prevail. His message reflected the ongoing belief among many of Trump's supporters that his presidency was divinely ordained, even in defeat. This narrative continued to resonate with Trump's evangelical base, many of whom believed that their fight to protect Christian values was far from over. As the Republican Party moves forward in the post-Trump era, the question remains: will Trump's spiritual advisors continue to wield the same influence, or will the next generation of leaders forge a new path for the religious right? Donald Trump's presidency demonstrated the powerful role that religious advisors can play in shaping political messaging and securing electoral success. Figures like Paula White, Franklin Graham, and Jerry Falwell Jr. were instrumental in framing Trump's leadership as part of a divine mission, helping him win the overwhelming support of evangelical Christians. While Trump's personal relationship with religion may have been unconventional, his ability to align his policies with the concerns of religious voters ensured his place as a champion of the evangelical community. His spiritual advisors not only helped craft his religious messaging, but also influenced key policy decisions, particularly in the areas of judicial appointments and religious liberty. As we look to the future, the legacy of Trump's religious advisors will continue to shape the relationship between faith and politics in America. Their influence, both during and after Trump's presidency, raises important questions about the role of religion in a pluralistic society and the long-term impact of blending faith with political power. References: Yelton, Tom. Franklin Graham defends evangelical support for Trump. NPR, December 20th, 2019. Hennessy, Maura. Paula White, Trump's faith advisor and advocate for prosperity gospel. The Washington Post, July 15th, 2017. Goodstein, Lori. Jerry Falwell Jr., Trump's key evangelical supporter. The New York Times, January 31st, 2016. Pew Research Center. White Evangelicals and Trump, 2016 to 2020. Voting Patterns and Poll Analysis. Pew, November 2020. Gallup. Religion and Political Affiliation, Trends and Impacts in the Trump Era. Gallup, January 2021.